Hello and welcome back to another episode of Reborn Mind, Body, Soul, where we talk to different experts in their field about the mind, the body, and the soul. And we have a very special guest today. He so happens to be related to me and have the same DNA as me. This is my brother. Welcome to the show, Mitch.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, brother.
You're going to see a lot of that today, a lot of the same laughs, a lot of the same jokes. All right, so I'm curious, Mitch. Yeah, what is your favorite? What would your favorite subject be? Like, preferred to talk about? Like, are you more curious about the mind, the body, or the soul, or love?
Um, I think any and everything. I'm sure that it's going to venture off into whatever way it wants to go. Our conversation. So let's let's do mind, body, and soul because the love is that's an easy topic for me. So mind, body, soul is a little bit more complicated.
Well, then, if it's easy, don't you want to explore it then?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay. So, do you want to share your journey with love? I know that's a big question, but just so people have context on your journey with love, because love isn't easy for everyone, you know?
Yeah. I think the best way to kind of explain my experience with love is I've had a lot of partners, and everyone is different, but I would say I hold love as the highest value in life is finding that partner, and I've just been searching for a long time, I guess you could say.
You have a lot of experience.
A lot of experience, yeah. So,
Can you
um,
contextualize that? Can you give a bit more
yeah. So
context?
I would just say, since I was a young age, I've done fairly well with the opposite sex, and that comes with having multiple partners, whether that be one night stands. And then also I've had multiple girlfriends, probably around 10, 8 to 10 relationships that are, a year plus. And yeah, I just kind of cycled through all the ones that I could go through, I guess is the best way to say it, in search of the right one. So
Yeah, what would you say is like the biggest thing that you found from like being single to getting in a relationship? Like, what's that journey like?
I think that when it comes down to it, you become a different person when you're by yourself comparatively when you're with somebody else. Um, it really does change. It changes your outlooks, your feelings, your thought processes, your decision making. Everything kind of shifts into something new when you become coexistent with another person. It's obviously a very different situation when you're not living together because you're kind of still doing your own thing. But once you take that step of moving in, that's where energies start colliding in with each other or merging, depending on the two people, right? So I think that when you're alone, you're on your own path, you make your own decisions, you don't have to consider somebody else's feelings and thoughts and what they want to do. Whereas when you get with somebody, you need to be able to decide things together and make decisions on your life together and everything like that. So um, you really do change when you become one from two people.
Yeah, do you want to what kind of like advice could you give someone that's like just about to make that transition?
I think the best way, the best advice that I can give is, you know, I think this is actually something that you told me. I don't even know if you remember this, but it's a really good analogy to think of how you want to really run a relationship. So when you first start out, you meet somebody, you're both driving to the meetup point or the date in your own vehicle, or you're walking or whatever you're doing. You're getting there your own way. Um, and when you get into a relationship, you're both driving your own cars, you're just starting out, you're meeting together, whatever. But then when that relationship moves into the next step, your partner is either getting in your car or you're getting in their car. And, you get in, you're kind of like nervous. You don't want to change the music. You don't want to touch the heat. You don't want to do down the windows. You're always conscious, like, hey, are you cold? Are you warm? Um, and as the relationship goes on, the comfortability gets to a higher point where you're actually okay with now you're getting in the vehicle, you're like, I don't care, I'm changing the music, or I'm turning the heat on. It doesn't matter if you're hot or you're cold. Well, I'm doing my window down. So you start kind of, your two paths started going like this, and then it went into one, and then now you're getting so comfortable that, and then you're also trying to be respectful to them and what they want. But the best way to kind of think about it is to stay with your two vehicles going together, but sometimes you just hop in each other's vehicle and you still respect each other. You don't just make decisions without asking or confirming that these are the decisions that you want to make as a team, being like, okay, you're cold, I'm hot, let's just kind of put it in the middle, or let me do the window down for a bit. Is that okay? But I think a lot of people forget to communicate and check in with their partner before they make decisions. And it's very much like a business aspect in a way, right? If you have a business partner, you're not going to go and spend $100,000 without confirming what you're buying and how it's going to benefit your partner. You wouldn't do that. So it's the same thing when it comes to having a connection and love, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's very important, and I think what you said right there is very important. Is the idea of communicating. Like if you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
do something, have that communication. I think that's something that I have quite deeply in my relationship, and I think that's something we've also worked on over the
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. A
Is
lot.
that form of communication? So, do you want to share how does someone have that kind of communication? What could it look like, or if someone's like hearing this for the first time?
Um, I think it's definitely situational, but um, I think the best way to try and help somebody that doesn't have communication is think in your mind externally. So if you're about to do something, just always consider, how would my partner feel? How would they think? Especially if you're not with them at that time, all it is a phone call and saying, "Hey, I'm about to do this. Does that line up with us?" And there are personal decisions that you're going to need to make on your own, so you're not just codependent on each other. And it also depends on how far in the relationship you are before you start making these decisions. But I think the biggest blocker that a lot of people have in this day and age is communication problems, let alone not just with your partner. I think with just anybody, right? A lot of people just shut down and they don't know how to express their feelings or what's happening, and then that's when it turns into blow ups, and that's when it turns into a lot of clashing together versus just speaking it out and letting the other person know what you're feeling and what decisions that you want to make, and just checking in, right? And then also being mindful of how if they feel that that's a something that they don't want, being mindful of that, what that energy will do to them if you decide to go ahead and do it anyways, right? um, and again, you still need to live your own life, you still need to have things that you do for yourself, but when it comes to being with your partner, what real love is pure happiness. That's what you want. You want them to be happy no matter what it is. And it's finding a compromise, finding the ground zero, 50-50. Sometimes it's going to go this way and sometimes it's going to go this way, but you're always going to have 100%. It just depends on how much you want to take from them to, make you feel better or make the decisions that you want. Right.
Yeah, and how have you been able to find the middle ground? And maybe also give an example when you haven't been able to find the middle ground, because it's all great when we express about like the easy the thing to do, but generally where the most wisdom comes from is where like, yeah, this is where I wasn't able to do it, and then that's how I learned this piece of information.
Yeah, I would say, trying to think back on one specifically. Um, for instance, if it could be something as small as, hey, I want to go here for dinner, and you want to go here for dinner, and you can't figure out where to go. It's like, okay, well, maybe we just pick somewhere else together, so that there's no lose lose, right? Or there's no win lose. It's a, okay, let's just find somewhere together that we're gonna decide, or I decide now, you decide later, and then all the way up into, should we move in together, right? Is this analytically a good time to try and move in with each other, or is it not? And I think that's where in my past I've made a mistake where I felt personally that I wasn't quite ready for that. and I didn't voice that out because I also wanted to, but I knew that it wasn't the right time. And we were already, sort of having issues. And with those issues, I wasn't in a good place of communication at that time. So I wasn't expressing what I was genuinely feeling. And I also wasn't being true to myself. And I don't know if she was, I'm sure she was feeling the same things. And that's why, we're like, okay, well, let's get a place. And we got a place. And within a month, we broke up and had to, and we signed a year lease. But luckily, I figured that situation out and I got a friend to move in. But, in that circumstance, I feel as though we were both not really ready, but she wanted to. I wasn't quite there yet, but I caved, and I wasn't open enough to say that I'm not quite ready for that, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's a perfect example. And
Yeah.
then now, knowing what you know now, what would that look like? Just so the audience can hear. I think for me personally, like when I hear communication from someone articulated in a certain way, it helps me understand. So let's say that same scenario,
Hmm.
how would you articulate that or verbalize that now to your partner if you felt that same feeling?
I think that I would express what I'm feeling. I'm not quite ready for that step. Again, some situations you don't have a choice, right? You
But
have to.
let's say back when you were about to move in, she wanted to move in, and like you're just not ready.
Yeah, so you just approach the conversation with an open heart, and hopefully your partner respects you enough as well to give that back to you, right? So you come into a conversation, and you have to say everything that you're feeling, and have somewhat of a dialogue to why you're not ready for that, and express to them, and just say, hey, I don't know if this is the right step. I feel like we're having some issues between us that I would like to address before we kind of take this next step, just because, maybe subconsciously we were trying to fix it by, going into this move. But yeah, just communicating, and yeah, just saying, I'm not quite ready. I don't think that I'm ready for this. And then unfortunately, sometimes, you have to be aware that they could take that as a negative and say, well, if you're not ready for the next step, then I don't think I can be with you. But if somebody loves you, they won't say stuff like that to you. They'll try and understand your side and be aware of what you're feeling, so that they can take that within themselves and say, okay. And then if you're expressing these things, saying, I'm not quite ready, I feel like there's some more things we need to work on, I feel like you know we have some underlying issues that I'd like to talk about before we take this next step. And if they love you, they'll take that, and they'll resonate with it, and they'll understand that, okay, maybe they'll start thinking about it. And then also coming up with a solution if possible, with just saying, okay, well, maybe not just yet, but maybe we can retouch this in a month or 2 months, right? Let's go a little further first. And every situation is different. Some people both want to move in right away off the beginning, and you can't say that's a good idea or a bad idea. Everyone has their own life, but I think, at least with my history doing that, it never worked out. It never worked out. Yeah, so.
Okay, so now you said something which is also interesting. Was okay. You said there's just before we do that, like there's just some issues that I'd like to work out. Um, can you think of like an issue that you would want to work out? Because I think what you're sharing is so important because so many people don't have a format of
Mhm.
communication. So, can you give an example of what would be maybe an issue that you'd want to work out before moving
Yeah,
in?
yeah, I think keeping in mind too, like with that situation, we were also from different places. So we weren't, she was from a different city and town that I was from. So that one was a big one. But I would say what you were trying to touch on there would be lifestyle, right?
Okay.
I think
Okay.
lifestyle is a really big thing. And I think that some people will grow out of, like, I'm just going to go off this example. Let's say the party scene, right? Some
Yeah.
people, when you're getting into the age where you're starting to think about moving in with somebody, you're kind of, you're usually in a transition. It could be anywhere from 18 to whatever age, right? But the party thing, I think, is a big factor when it comes to somebody that is getting to the point where they don't want to be within that life anymore, and then your partner is still really wanting to go out and have fun. And I think that would be the biggest one. And in that scenario, when you have one person that's trying to be healthy, clean, go to the gym, read, meditate, or even just have a healthier life and just try and slowly cut out the partying and the party scene, and then your partner is going out, staying out till 2 a.m., staying out till whatever, drinking all the time. And if, especially when it comes down to, if the alcohol is changing who they are and it's being a negative, I would say that's a big topic that happens between a lot of relationships. And that's a really hard, it's a hard one to tackle. And there's so many different dynamics to that situation. And when it comes down to it, you really have to dive through what you want, and your partner needs to dive through what they want. And if it comes down to it, where the partying and debating on whether or not they have an addiction or not, right, that's another factor that can be a thing. But if they decide that, it usually gets to the point where the conversation is, you need to pick this over me, right? But that should be the last resort if you can communicate and work through it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Like that you are thinking on these levels, and like, because I don't know if you realize, Mitch, but people don't think like this on these levels. Are you aware of that?
Uh, to an extent, but not fully. I'm not sure, right?
Yeah, well, why don't I make you aware? Like, so something, Mitch and I were in a car or his truck yesterday going to look at new places for him. And Mitch is in an interesting situation where his life is very, up in the air in terms of what potentially could unravel. And one of those situations is his living situation, in terms of whether he's going to stay in Vancouver, where we are right now, or go travel in Australia. But he needs to be out of the house within June 1st, and we're recording this in May 7th or something like that. And so the roommate that Mitch has, he wants to vocalize that to him, saying, "Hey, look, like I don't know what's going to happen for me after 4 months." But I thought that you handled that very well. And so I think that this relates to what you're talking about here. And why I want to make you aware of this is because I don't think you're aware of the level of communication you're communicating at, plus the willingness to face a crucial conversation.
Yeah.
And I think most people avoid that.
Yeah, and it does come from business as well, right? I believe that I've had good communication for the most part, especially when it comes to my friends. But when it comes to certain relationships, especially business, because this can tie into business as well. And anyone that's thinking about having a business partner, everything is good when it's good. And everybody's happy when it's good, but when stuff starts hitting the fan and it starts getting bad, that's when you really need to be okay with communicating, especially if you get into business with your friends. And that's one of the things that I've had to go through with one of my closest friends. And fortunately, we've built a relationship between the two of us on good communication. And we're going through something, or we have been going through something when it comes to the business and shutting the business down. And especially when it comes to money, that's when people get really, really touchy and scared. But fortunately for us, being able to talk and have that open table where it's like, hey, we start the conversation. If I have to call him or he has to call me, and we know it's going to be a hard conversation, the first thing we just say is, hey, this is a really hard conversation to have. I want you to remember that I love you, and your friendship is more important to me than any amount of money. And I will figure it out by myself if I have to, but we're in this situation together. And then just saying that opens the door to being like, wow, okay, my heart's good. We're good. Intentions are there. Intention is good. Let's talk about it. And they are hard conversations because, it's a lot of money that we're dealing with that we have to figure out. So, But that ties into relationships as well, right? If you have something that you're feeling within you and you need to express it to your partner, and you know that it's going to be a hard conversation, you can just open up like that. And also open up the door to saying, at any moment when we are talking about this, if you are feeling that it's too much, or you're feeling that, it's something that I need to step back on, please just let me know, and we can try and adjust, or we can stop the conversation and try again. But just being open and letting them know.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, dude, you saying that just warms my heart. Like
Mm,
that's the important. Even though you're dealing with so much money, or yeah, it's like keeping your heart open. I think that's a
yeah.
big part of this, while working and creating win-wins.
Hmm.
Um, how do you have the courage to have these crucial conversations? Because I think for me, I know what my strategy was in the past was just to avoid, and
Mm,
I got a feeling that that's a lot of people. They know they need to be having conversations, but internally the conversation just feels too difficult to have. So then they just push it away or forget about it till it comes
blows
out.
up.
Most likely in a drunk
Yeah.
situation, it blows up. So how do you have the courage to do that? And how can you help someone have the courage? What could someone do to get the courage to have that kind of conversation?
I think you just you have to understand that if when it comes to a relationship, um, you're with somebody that should be caring about you and should love you, and it's funny that you say this, because it's not funny that you say this, but it just made me think about, um, you know it's similar to maybe how people feel about talking about suicidal thoughts, right? It kind of closes you off, and it makes you not want to talk about it. And that's what happens in a small way with conversations with your spouse when they're difficult conversations, is it makes you want to shut down. And it takes a lot of practice, even if it's just small things, small decisions in the day that, you know, you don't even want to reply to them in certain things, because you're sorry, you hold back certain things that you're feeling. And I think a good practice is, being aware of when those situations are happening in your relationship, and saying, okay, in this moment I feel like this. And even if you're nervous, the best way to make you feel less nervous, I believe, is to do kind of what I just said. Just communicate. Say, hey, again, I want to express this to you, and I'm only expressing it to you out of love, and hopefully you can respect my thoughts or my feelings. Maybe don't say that, because that kind of opens a little bit of a closed door, because but expressing that, hey, I'm coming out of a place of love, and at any moment, if this conversation gets too hard, we can pull back. Again, it's so situational, because there are small things in the day that our partners do that we don't like, but you take the pros of love versus the cons of love, right? And there's small things that you do have to take on. Not everybody's going to be able to be ecstatic about everything about their partner, right? Like, it's great if you get close to that, but in the reality, there are small things about our partners that bother us, but it's not letting them all build up, build up, build up. And then also, I think a big factor too is understanding if you're genuinely happy in your relationship. And that's a whole different conversation of being able to figure out if you're really happy, and if you're willing to walk away from the relationship because you're genuinely not happy. Sometimes people are unhappy in their relationships, and they just stay with them, and then everything about their partner starts to bother them. And then at that point, you're so far gone that the communication, you know, isn't really there, because you're not being true to what you're actually feeling. Um, and and yeah, and I mean, counseling can help for sure, but the ideal the ideal situation is that you're good, you're so good at communicating that these don't build up and you don't resent each other. That's what, is the best way of having a relationship, if you can start out that way. But being a communicator at the beginning, when you first meet somebody, is the best way to do it, because that's how they know you. Every thought that you have, every feeling that you have, act on that, express that, let them know right away when you start hanging out and you start getting this emotional bond, so that they know that that's you. And then if they're closed off, they'll start doing it to you as well, or vocalizing to them, hey, I'm a big communicator, right? Even if you're not, you can trick your mind, you can trick your subconscious into believing that. If you just say, I'm a big communicator, I'll tell you everything that I feel, right? So
Hmm. Do you find other men are good at this, or do you think this is unique to you from your observation with your friends and your in
yeah,
their
I
relationships?
think it's a very unique thing. It took me years and years to even believe or understand that I was like this. I think that I've been like this because I started my journey with the opposite sex so young, that I was able to maybe learn this, because I feel as though women are better communicators for sure. I think within men, it's the whole stigma of we have to suppress our emotions, and generational stuff that's pushed down on us, which is it's good, because where society's heading, it's a lot more accepting. Guys are getting better at it. But yeah, I think it's definitely tougher for men to be able to be open. But everybody has a mom, right? How do you speak to your mom when you talk to her? How much do you hold back? How much do you communicate with her? It's in you. You just need to be able to pass that over to a person that you now love in a different way.
Hmm. So would that be the advice you would give to someone that's looking to communicate like this a bit more? Is like, um, think about your relationship with your mom and how you speak with your mom, and then translate that with your relationship. Is that what you would do, or is that how you learned this?
I would say so. Yeah, I think that that's a big factor, and it doesn't have to be your mom, because not everybody has a mom in their life. It could be, you know, it could be with your brother, it could be with your sister, your aunt, just any person that you have that has been in your life for an extended period of time, that you do speak to when you have issues, when you're not feeling good. You know, everybody has somebody for the most part in their life that they speak to on a very open, platonic level. And if you can relate your situation with them to your relationship, that's the best way of going about it, especially if your relationship with this person over here is really good, your family member or whoever that may be. If it's really good and you know that you can call them at any time, think about your relationship with them and try and implement things within your new relationship. And it's a different type of love that you get when you're in a relationship. Um, and the issue that I would say that a lot of people can run into is there's the teeter totter of love and hate. And it's said that love and hate are so close to the same emotion that you really need to be careful, because that's when it can get pulled the other way quickly, right? So being
Okay,
aware of
so
that.
yeah, so how do you become aware of that? Because I've always found that so fascinating. How can someone go from I love you, I love you, I love you to I hate you, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I hate you, I hate you. It's like,
Yeah, it's
whoa.
an interesting one.
So what's your experience with that? Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, within my relationships, I've had that. Um, but looking at it now at a deeper level, it was within my insecurities that were causing that. Because you need to love yourself really before you can allow or let anyone else love you, and that's a big factor, is working on yourself first, and understanding that you need to be good within here before anyone else can get good in here. And I think that that's a big factor, is people are unhappy in their life and in their situations, and then they just jump to whoever gives them the next attention, right? And they jump into these relationships with the people that they just met, and they don't give it time to get to know each other. Or some people, yeah, you can fall in love at first sight. That's a thing. It happens, right? But um spending the time to get to know somebody, and really like trying to understand them on a deeper level. Does your vibration connect with my vibration? Will it work? And another factor to keep in mind is, a lot of the times is, two negatives make a positive. A negative and a positive make a negative, and two positive makes a positive. So finding that similarity within this person that you're trying to be with will create whether or not that emotion in you will change from love to hate, negatively or positively. Well, it doesn't usually go from hate to love. That's not, but from love to hate. And I think everything stems back to being honest with yourself and honest with your partner and communicating it all the
Hmm.
time.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to be aware of. And when you think about relationships and people wanting to get into relationships, what would be like kind of your final advice for people?
I would say if you're trying to get into a relationship, make sure you're good inside of you first. You know, of course we look to other people for our happiness, and other people can make you happy and make you feel better. But I think at the same time, just being honest with yourself and looking in the mirror and saying, how happy am I right now? And what is causing the unhappiness within my life? And what are the steps that I can take to at least start trying to be happy within me, so that can, correlate to my happiness with somebody else, right? And I think that's such a big thing. And then also trying to understand if this person that you're getting involved with, again, so situational. If you've never met them before, you're on dating apps and you just met somebody, or you're out and you just meet somebody, versus if this has been somebody in your life for a while, it's kind of a slippery slope, because take that time to get to know the person if they're new in your life, right? Take the time to really figure out if their philosophies, their beliefs, what they want to do with their life, where they want to go with work, and see if it aligns, and try and dive in. That's one thing that I think that within this relationship world that we're in now, is it's so much about lust
Hmm.
versus authenticity of who they are. And I think that ties into why a lot of the relationships fail nowadays, is because it starts out with so much lust that you're not really you're not really into who they are as a person. You're into who
Hmm.
they are externally. And taking that time to get to know the internal is so much more important, because, you know, as they I would say in the dating world, they say there's always somebody waiting for you to break up, or there's always somebody waiting for you to break up, because, the next person will treat this person like that. So keeping that in mind, that you need to fall in love with the inside, right? Fall in love with the inside of a person, not the outside. And that took me a long time to, as you know, to figure out. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
yeah. And I don't ever want to take away from any of the women that I've been with, right? They've all been beautiful people in their own way. And again, this is all just from experience from all of them, but they've all been amazing. So we didn't work. It was positive, negative, and it just didn't work, right?
Wow, I love that. I think that's a great place to end is fall in love with the person on the inside.
Yeah, super important.
Yeah.
Super
And
important.
actually I'll add to that, like there's something called sexual chemistry and sexual compatibility.
Mm,
And ideally you have both. So
mm,
sexual chemistry is the attraction to the other person, right? You do
yeah,
have an attraction to them, and how chemically are you attracted to that person? But compatibility, like frequency wise, so some people like to have sex like once a week, some people like to have sex 5 times a week, 6 times a week, some people like to have sex 3 times a day, right?
yeah.
And so or some people just once a month. And
Hmm.
ideally that compatibility is there too, right? So that's the other challenge, right? Because you could have a lot of chemistry, but
Right.
then the frequency is different.
Yeah.
vice versa, you can have a lot of frequency, but the chemistry is not there.
Yeah.
And so I think what you said, Mitch, was very powerful. I think it's like the main thing to think about, right? But I don't also want to negate that having an attraction is important as well, right? Because
Oh, of
for
course.
me
Yeah.
personally, like I could fall in love with a lot of people's inner
Yeah.
world, you know? Like
Yeah.
really, really, really for sure. Like, so, but like, for example, like, I'm attracted to women. So like if I fall in love with a guy's inner world, there's no chemistry, there's
Yeah.
no, right? So
I think
I
to touch
think,
on that real quick is I think for the most part, the initial attraction to anyone usually comes from physical anyways. But it
mm,
can't be the only thing. You know,
mm,
for the most part, there are situations where you're out and you're hanging out and you're like, oh, this is a cool person, and then maybe you do really fall in love with them, and then that attraction for them physically actually starts to go up unknowingly, unconsciously, because you're like, oh, I might. We're just talking, we're just meeting. She's okay or he's okay. It's whatever. But then you get to know them, and you're like, holy, this is going, and then you're like, wow, she's getting better and better looking to me, because you're starting to really fall for them, or he's getting better and better looking to me because so just keeping that in mind as well, that usually stems from, for the most part, from the physical lust, but
mm.
not just remembering not to make that the only thing that's
Yeah,
important.
and I don't know about you, Mitch, but my observation is men make that the biggest mistake out
Big.
of the. It's like I can't believe how high. It's like men just rank that. That's their only
Yeah,
ranking system, hot or not. It's like it's so
that's it.
cavemen.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, right? Is speaking, obviously we can speak more on a men's perspective because we are men. That yeah, like that's the biggest factor for a lot of guys is, look at my girlfriend,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah, and she is like so much more than just hot or not.
yeah. Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
like other guys rank other guys' girlfriends, and it's so two dimensional. It's so caveman,
yeah, it is,
and,
it really is.
and you got to hang out with this human, and you're
Hmm.
living with this person. Like,
Yeah,
oh great, like the category that she's hot. How many parts of the day does that really even matter? Because you're like interacting, you got to make life decisions
yeah,
and all these things. So
yeah, yeah,
yeah, I think that's a good place to land today. Is that just to kind of summarize? Is that fall in love with the person inside, and
yeah,
then have attraction with the person outside. I think this is a really good
yeah.
place to end. Would you add anything else before we wrap up here?
No, I think that's pretty good. Maybe just remember that happiness is within before it can be without, or out, not without. It's got to come from in here, and then you can start expressing it to other people, right?
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's land the plane there. All right, so this was another episode of Reborn Mind, Body, Soul. Today we explored the idea and thoughts of love with a guy that I love. Like, this is so cool to be able to do this. So
Yeah.
thanks for coming on the show. I think there'll be many more of these.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, take care. Have a great day, everyone.